that we can incorporate in our strategic plan when it comes to sports tourism, such as even cricket. Cricket is one of the biggest spectator sports right now throughout the Caribbean. And we can talk, we're talking about a multi-purpose stadium where you could play multiple sports. Let's not forget cricket and cricket's potential. I think it would have tremendous impact to the economy, and I think it would lure a lot of people to our shores to want to come here. And I believe that the Virgin Islands, being the trailblazers, we were first and foremost when it came to any form of entertainment. Other islands have actually taken that first place slot as the destination for entertainment, having these major festivals, and where have we lost sight? So the Donna Storg-Hansen team, number 2 on the ballot, would like to rekindle that and show you its true benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more rebuttal, Mr. Smith.
I have my rebuttal ready.
This is a rebuttal, and then we're going to go from there to redirect.
Okay. I thought I did this already.
He started.
He did first.
I did.
We're in redirect now.
The redirect.
We're redirect.
Let's go to
The
redirect.
30 seconds.
Okay.
30 seconds.
30 seconds?
Yes.
You know, it's, I can't understate this. Healthcare, particularly since we're here at the AARP forum, healthcare and the renewal of our healthcare system and medical tourism is the way to revamp and energize this economy. It takes care of our people, and it also brings the money back to our shores. So I think that the Smith-Frederick team will be trailblazers in this area, because as the only healthcare professional on this podium, I know exactly where we need to go and what we need to do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Moser, redirect.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, there's a situation at WAPA no one's talking about, at least I haven't heard it, and that is WAPA's sales are going down. The amount of power that's being sold, the usage is down. And as the rates go up, for whatever reason, people leave the grid, and so sales go down some more. Now, the reason that's bad is WAPA has a fixed cost, let's say $150 million a year. And so that has to be shared among all the users. So as people leave the grid, the rest of the people are sharing that cost, and so their bill goes up. And so if everybody leaves the grid, except for you, do you know what your bill is? It's $150 million. Okay. We've got to get usage up, and I've got a proposal for that.
All right. Thank you very much, Mellon Young.
I also wanted to add regarding energy that post-Hurricane Irma, I was in the States, in Washington, D.C., meeting with congressional leaders and the Department of Energy with my fellow senators from Puerto Rico. And we talked about microgrids, we talked about burying more cable. But this can only happen if we actually partner. And we can ask for much more millions of dollars if we partner with Puerto Rico. I know sometimes people get scared, they're like, oh, Puerto Rico is the big dog. But they're willing to work with us, and they showed that post-Hurricane Irma, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you for the response, Diasi Kofeld.
Yes, just quickly, Governor, the Public Finance Authority's audit done by the Inspector General for the United States Department of Interior and our local Inspector General dated September of 2017, it said financial reporting discrepancies and questionable expenditures, $150 million. And they trace it back all the way to 2002 when you were the head of the PFA. And they said that had the PFA back in 2002 at the last audit actually implemented their recommendations, so that $150 million that is all out there somewhere would not be out there somewhere but in our treasury.
Thank you for your response, Albert Bryan.
Just quickly, no one has mentioned services. The American economy has switched to services. We've invested $120 million for the fiber optic network in the Virgin Islands, and it's not made us a dime. I plan to put that to work. Respectfully, Mr. Smith, we don't steal anything, but we try to incorporate everything now, like our slogan says. And thank you, Mr. Mosler, for acknowledging the prowess and the legal expertise of Mr. Roach.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenneth.
He's the best.
I do want to say that we have begun the process of, in fact, reconstructing our healthcare systems. The Wang Louis Hospital and the Charles Howard Memorial Hospital has in fact been approved by the federal government, and we have signed off on the documents to begin the process for the demolition and new construction of a new Wang F. Louis Hospital and a new Charles Howard Memorial Clinic. We're now finalizing the issues for Myra Keithan. Charlotte Kimmelman has crossed the 50% barrier and will also qualify for demolition and new construction, and finalizing the issues as late as last week with the staff and the management of the Schneider Regional Medical Center. We then, what the plan is to get together with the medical community and come to a decision and a strategy on what is right-sizing the facilities, how we provide for mental health services, and the like to rebuild the infrastructure of the healthcare system.
Thank you very much. And Senator Donna Starr, you get another redirect. It should be all right.
The Donna Stork Hansen team intend to hit the ground running on day one. We do not intend to make grand announcements just a month or 2 months before election. It is our intention, there's an old saying that when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's not about having a plan to actually get elected. It's a plan to govern. And I believe that we're witnessing here in the Virgin Islands perhaps an administration that did not have a plan to govern. So that's why you're hearing so many announcements prior to an election. So the Donna Stork Hansen team, number 2 on the ballot already, if you get our platform and look at our platform, we intend to hit the ground running on day one.
Very much for your response. So we're going to go to question.
Mr. Moderator,
the moderator, sure.
if you could just give us these envelopes before you start asking the questions, it's a little distracting.
Yes, we're doing it now.
No, she's doing it while the question is being asked.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
They don't like quizzes.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, a lot of the
Yes.
same issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. You could bring mine anytime.
White envelopes.
Yes. Everybody has got their questions. We're on question 3, and Mr. Mosler, this is going to be directed to you. You having trouble getting in the envelope, sir? Okay. We're dealing with healthcare, and I want to inform you there is going to be another one on long-term healthcare, so don't spend too much money, too much time on the first, or go to the second question. Healthcare in the territory has been a challenge for decades and is on the verge of collapse. Both federal and local subsidies are not adequate to reimburse the hospital for services rendered. Question 1 on healthcare. Are there any structural changes you would recommend to correct these inadequacies? Question 2. Looking ahead, what do you envision in the long term a healthcare system that would adequately meet the needs of residents and visitors alike? Mr. Mosler.
Okay, number 1, whoever becomes governor, I would strongly recommend that you build the new hospital first before you knock the old one down. Okay. Okay, so that's a structural change. So look, healthcare, you're going to hear the same recurring theme. We keep our own income taxes. So I'm going to explain by example. We have a hospital that bills $10 million to an insurance company on behalf of the patients. It pays the hospital employees $10 million. Now there's no money left for Band-Aids, WAPA bills, fixed the air conditioning in the operating room. Not so fast. When it pays the employees $10 million, $3 million goes to the government, approximately, it's not exactly, as income taxes. We get to keep our own income taxes. The hospital is part of the government. It's a public hospital, and so that cost to the hospital was only $7 million, and there would have been $3 million left over if they hadn't given that money back to the general fund as income taxes. And then they could have paid their WAPA bill and everything else and been self-sufficient and wouldn't be looked at as the problem. The hospital's losing money. Well, if you look at how much money the hospital's contributing to the general fund out of the wages and salaries, which are much higher than that, it's not so bad. Now, number two, we've got satellites around the hospital, such as radiation and we've got all kinds of doctors' offices. And these people make millions of dollars. And in the States, they need to bring those into the hospital so the hospital can recapture those dollars. But here, we keep the income taxes that all those people pay. So we need to encourage those, because we're going to lose those taxes if we bring them in, and the costs of operating inside the hospital are much higher than the costs of running an operation outside the hospital. So, number one, by recognizing the real way to account for the hospital, which is the way every agency in the world does, IMF, World Bank, it's always on a net basis for government, we can see that the medical center is extremely profitable, and that the path to the future is to expand the satellites. And another thing, I got a couple seconds. If we bring in clinics that have long-term patients that are there for more than a year, like a bone marrow transplant, we get to keep the income taxes of the patients. This is a huge bonus. You get some very, very wealthy payments in for more than a year. So I'll get into this more later. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Mellon Young, you are now dealing with, again, the initial response. You've got 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Holland. Structural changes, I actually disagree with the governor when he says he wants to right-size the hospitals to become smaller. I will admit that we have lost a lot of people in the last few years, and so the population is, of course, a little smaller. But if we're looking to rebuild the territory and we're looking to have our Virgin Islanders come back to worthy jobs that are paying the right amount of money, then we need to right-size it to what it's supposed to be. These hospitals were built back in 1982. And so today we're in 2018. Why would we want to go smaller? In fact, we need to move from just the whole Medicare and Medicaid type of patients into the type of health care that will attract persons from other islands in the Caribbean and even the United States, because people would love to come to the Virgin Islands for health care if we actually had the infrastructure to bear it. So if we have those types of patients that will come for other things like cosmetic surgery, et cetera, and be in a villa to recover, wouldn't you think that they will want to do that? And so those are the higher paying type of patients that we have, and that will bring in money. Looking ahead, what do I envision in the long term is just that. The cosmetic surgeries, taking care more of our older population. Here we are at the AARP, and so we recognize that most of our population is in the higher tier. We have the oldest population in the Caribbean. And so we should be able to take care of us first. And just like in Florida, that has become sort of like the place where folks go to retire, we would love to have folks retire here and have that multiplier effect where you have then many pharmacies, many services that will cater to our elderly population. So I don't think it's going to solve it all, but certainly that it is going to actually fill up that part of the economy that is escaping from us. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for your response, Diassi Kofeld.
Yes. Dwight and I are not experts in the medical field, so we've met and talked with experts. And what they tell us is some amazing things. First of all, that Virgin Islanders have spent over $60 million in the Pavia Hospital in Puerto Rico. That's a shocking amount. We need to keep that money here. And how do we do it? And Mr. Smith, we're not stealing the idea from you because we thought about it months ago before these forums, but we believe very strongly in making our hospitals teaching hospitals or link them with a university hospital in the States. And what does that bring us? That brings us modern technology, professions who are knowledgeable in the field and can help treat our people and be at the forefront of medical treatment, because right now we're at the background of medical treatment. Secondly, we need to make sure that we bill properly for Medicare. There must be very robust committees consisting of doctors and nurses who are dedicated to reviewing medical records and making sure they comply with all these difficult regulations that Medicare imposes. Because once these records are sent up to CMS for authorization for payment and there's an error on them, CMS will not pay anything. So if we have a robust committee on St. Thomas as well as St. Croix dealing with reviewing these medical records to ensure compliance with every dot of I's and cross of T's for Medicare, then there will not be the back and forth with CMS. It's very important that the hospital bill promptly and bill accurately, because how can you have any type of a business if you're not billing promptly and accurately? You cannot continue. And then the structures of the hospitals must have regular maintenance. Just like every other government building, there must be regular maintenance. The third floor of the hospital here, the Juan Louis Hospital, was leaking even before the hurricane. So you can't blame the hurricanes for that. Then we have those modular units that have been sitting out there by the cancer center. Why aren't they up and running? What is a holdup and who's affected but we the people? We the people. Why isn't there a restroom in the emergency room? Who affects? We the people that need to take our families and relatives and friends there. But we put up with it, but we, with the Dwight Nicholson, Soraya Diasi-Kofelt, number 3 on the ballot administration, we will change all that because we will put the people first, and we know that healthcare is very important. We cannot attract nurses to stay here. They're trained at UVI and to stay here if we don't have a good medical system for them to stay. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Albert Bryan.
As far as structural changes, we definitely support the fast construction and recovery of our hospital system, especially in St. John, where we are most vulnerable and our residents are most vulnerable because they don't have access to health care. We too believe that St. Croix has enough land that we can build a hospital before tearing down the one that we have right next door to it through a land swap or something else. Between the 2 hospitals and the Cigna insurance plan, we spent $320 million or thereabout in healthcare in the Virgin Islands for 100,000 people. My vision for it is that we can somehow incorporate a PPO health plan where everyone would pay $40 or so every 2 weeks towards a hospital plan that would give you urgent care, would give you emergency care, and would also give you an opportunity to have a pharmacy plan. You could couple that with a private sector plan like Cigna so you can get health care anyway. That would be complemented by a healthy lifestyle living that introduced our young people to healthy eating lifestyles, actually have them work out on the tracks instead of building schools upon them, a vigorous sports program to allow them to exercise, to reduce the amount of diabetes, heart hypertension, and heart disease in our islands. I would also support the expansion of our clinic systems. To Mr. Smith's credit, the East End Health Center as well as the Frederickstead Health Clinic are doing really well in reaching to people in our community, not only in healthcare but in dentistry. The expansion of our mental health facilities and identifying young people at an early age who are suffering from trauma, behavioral problems, so that they don't turn into criminals and populate our Golden Grove facility, where almost 60% of them have some type of behavioral or mental challenge. We would also like to expand our health workforce because we know that there will be a lot of health needs in our community. Over 75% of our voters are over the age of 45, and our community is very aging. We're also going to be entertaining baby boomers from our tourism product. They're going to need stuff like dialysis and walkways that they can work on, nurses for care. I really believe that telemedicine is a way for our residents to be able to save money. If you have to see a pediatric doctor for diabetes, you don't need to go to the office. You can check the doctor remotely, or a neurosurgeon. All these specialties can be accessed through telemedicine. Lastly, medical visas. I want to work with our delegate, Stacey Plaskett, who's been working desperately to get visas for people who want to access our healthcare system.
Thank you for your response, Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you. I am also pleased to announce that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, in tandem with approving the demolition and reconstruction of the new hospitals, have approved $50 million to build a hardened structure, which is a 65-bed hardened structure hospital that will be constructed and put in place first before there's any demolition of the hospital. And that structure is actually now being constructed to be shipped to the territory, and that will happen on the 3 islands. I believe we did get the modular system on St. John up and it's operating, and the A&E services for the St. Thomas facility was done. Right-sizing the hospitals are really about ensuring that they receive the revenues and the monies for their expenses. The hospitals have always been too big. We've never exercised 50% capacity, more than 50% of the 250 beds. And so CMS and the insurance agencies will not provide a fee schedule that encompasses the cost of the services of the hospital because they refuse to pay for empty space. So the Roy Schneider Hospital is locked in by CMS on a 1989 fee-based schedule, and the Wang Louis Hospital is locked in on a 1991 fee-based schedule, and we have spent thousands of dollars working with HHS to have that problem resolved, but it comes down to the bottom line. We're not paying for empty rooms. We're not paying for power burning in rooms that are not being occupied. We also were able, under this administration, to increase the qualification for Medicaid for uninsured families by moving the per capita qualification from $8,000 to $15,000 per person, and moving for the aged and folks with disability and blindness, moving their per capita number to 20,000. CMS has reported, and we have can document that in the last year, both hospitals combined have received $35 million of direct payments from the Medicaid population that's now enrolled in the program. As you know, the US government is funding 100% of the program, and the enrollment has gone from 23,000 to 41,000 persons in the US Virgin Islands. And so I agree that we have to work with the health community in terms of deciding the new hospital facilities, and they must encompass mental health services and support for that community as well.
All right, we're going to shift now your first response, Sam.
Wait.
What?
They didn't answer the question.
I started.
Yes,
I started it. It's my fault.
that's right. Sorry, go right ahead. Jeez.
Storg and
Come
then-
on, Holland, get your act
With the
together.
three rules.
Go right ahead.
I suspect that we all have senior moments.
You sure do.
Don't pick on the AARP, I'm a founding member.
No, I'm picking on myself. Actually, I'm here with my card. Thought I would have preferential treatment.
I don't know whether the rest of them have them, do they?
To respond to that question, I'd like to first and foremost thank our federal partners for ensuring that we're receiving entitlements in the wake of two disasters. And you know, it's interesting because I believe under Donna Storg Hansen administration, our recovery would have been at a faster pace starting from February of this year. That's number one. Number two, I think that when we're talking about healthcare and the infrastructure, let's just pivot for a second here. We need to develop a strategic plan to start recruiting our good health professionals. Here, you know, I'm quickly reminded of persons like, I believe, Dr. Griffith, who I believe have some serious potential and a talent that we have allowed to escape us here in the Virgin Islands. And the infrastructure, obviously, we're receiving money from the federal government, and hospitals are going to be rebuilt. I believe they're going to be completed at a faster pace under Donna Storg Hansen administration. I look at the second one, looking ahead, what do you envision in terms of long-term care? I believe a healthy economy would produce or create a better ability to reinvest in ourselves. If we don't have a healthy economy, we can't look at Medicare, Medicaid, and the obligation a government have for that fair share contribution in order to be able to increase the level of Medicare and Medicaid. I'm looking forward to the day that we can, in fact, interact with the United States Congress to ensure that the people of the Virgin Islands get their fair share. Because when you look at Medicare and Medicaid levels in Puerto Rico, they say it's per capita or based on the population. I'm not sure that that equation is accurate. But these are the different areas that we have to truly explore. And last but not least, we have to start identifying ways to put money in the hands of Virgin Islanders. And I would like to navigate to the issue of income tax refunds. We want to make sure that income tax refunds are paid on time. Because if you're talking about long-term care, you also have to mix it with people's ability to be able to pay deductibles. And if you're denying people or residents of the Virgin Islands who are owed income tax refunds money in refunds, then what you're doing is you're cutting off a stream a stream of money that would be circulated in the economy. Thank you.
You bet. Mr. Smith.
And no, you didn't steal it. I know it's friendly borrowing, but that's okay. When we talk about healthcare, and I'm speaking from my professional experience, structurally, we have to talk about the operational structure as well as the physical plan. Operationally, the Department of Health needs to reform. The Department of Health needs to move from doing all these things that it's not doing well and move to being a regulatory entity and put these things in the community and support prevention. We need to move to a prevention and a wellness model, and a model that supports population health. And in doing that, I believe that the federally qualified health centers, who are serving 20% of this community already, between Frederiksted Health and East End Health Center, we serve almost 20,000 patients annually. So we have issues of health insurance. We have 32% of our population are uninsured. So reimbursements, working closely with our delegate and our federal partners to ensure that the 100% that we're currently getting up to January is extended into a longer period so that the local government wouldn't have to carry that cost because it's not there. I also am going to go back. We have to reform our hospital system because that's the most expensive avenue of care. We need to move from the governance of all this political toxic dysfunction of political boards and move that to the university to take all that political toxicity out. In the terms of mental health, we have to incorporate a plan that supports mental health as part of the main offering of healthcare. For long term, we believe that we need to develop a system that focuses on wellness and incorporates all the areas of lifestyle, walkability, sidewalks, all those things that encourage our people to get good nutrition, which comes into agriculture, and to have the access to the type of exercise and lifestyle things that would support staying healthy and staying out of the emergency rooms to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mosley, you've got rebut.
Okay, a couple of things quickly. Does anybody really think new hospitals are going to make healthcare a whole lot better? Okay, we got to have it, but it's a management problem that we have now. Other things have to change as well. New schools. We've got modulars, we've got new schools. Are we going to go from the bottom to the top in education? No. There's a management problem. It's not just the buildings. It's like your father gives you a new car, which is nice, but if you don't have gas money, you can't maintain it, you don't know how to drive, it's not going to work. It's not going to help you any. You just get to look at it, okay? We do have an expert. We got one right here, okay? If anybody doesn't think we have experts in the Virgin Islands, Melito is an expert on healthcare. I totally agree with Albert Bryant. We need larger pools, get more people into the pools, bring the cost down. And yes, our federal funding went up, but it went up for not such a good reason. It went up because I believe they reevaluated and determined we had a whole lot more desperate people than they thought because the cost of living was so high here. And so they adjusted for a higher cost of living, realized we're a lot worse off than we thought, and we were able to get more funding that way. I'd rather see the economy grow and have everybody's income double and get less federal funding. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Millen Young, rebut, 1 minute.
I just wanted to make it absolutely clear that I said the right sizing to bring more people, to keep more people here in the Virgin Islands being treated. That's how you get better quicker, when you are surrounded by family and friends. And even as I was growing up, everybody went to Puerto Rico. And then they got upset because of the language barrier, and then they went to Miami. And so we talk about Cleveland Clinic, we talk about the Mayo Clinic. We want people to stay here. And if people actually stay here, the money will circulate in our economy. And so that's what I'm talking about, serving the people that we have here. AARP, we are the oldest population in the Caribbean. Let's keep the monies here, and that will cause the multiplier effect of all the services that our elderly folks need. And so we're not just concentrating on the elderly people. I mean, even our young people. I just met a mother coming over from St. Thomas to St. Croix. She was leaving the territory because the services are not there for her autistic children. Thank you so much.
All right, Diasi Kofel.
I was at a roundtable forum with FEMA officials earlier this year, and there were representatives of human services as well as nonprofits who deal with mentally ill persons. I was very surprised to hear that our government pays millions upon millions and millions of dollars a year to house our children, our juveniles under the age of 18 years old off island. We need to have a facility here. We continue to pay these outside entities millions of dollars. We need to keep that money here and to keep our people here. They'll be treated, as Senator Jeanette Milling Young said, they'll be treated better because they have family here who care. Also, the UVI nursing program is an excellent program. We believe it should be expanded significantly, and we have to make sure that our nurses stay here. How are they going to stay here if we pay them well and have a good place for them to work? But when they see traveling nurses getting paid better than they are, what do? They get frustrated and they leave. My oldest son is 31 years old, and he was born with by help of a traveling nurse. Are you telling me all these years we couldn't get our act together so we could have our own nurses deliver babies? Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Albert Bryan.
I've been going around talking to people and mostly listening for the last 3 years about problems. And one thing you'll learn about Albert Bryan is I am a purposeful person. I don't do things just to do them. For healthcare, we as Virgin Islanders have to recognize that we've been having this conversation for 50 years and we haven't gotten it right. It is time for us to have a private partner that has a branding and security and that can give our people the confidence that they can get well in our own hospitals. Not that we give up control totally. We would have government representation on the board, but we'd be assured that we won't keep promoting Virgin Islanders to the head of the hospital and then chopping off their heads like lambs to the slaughter because they don't have the resources, they don't have the money, they don't have the skill, and they don't have a support of a government and a people behind them in order to make it right. We believe in a plan. That's why we propose a GRS plan. We have a healthcare proposal as well to get people together, get a private partner, assure the confidence in the system, and make sure that our people are taken care of as they grow older in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you. I want to say that, Melita, that the federal qualified health care centers are an integral part of a modern healthcare system in the Virgin Islands. And as you know, this is why early in the administration, we agreed to transfer asset and resources from the clinics of the Department of Health and to have the federally qualified healthcare centers provide the services like dental chairs and equipment and things of that nature. You're absolutely correct. The Department of Health needs to focus on the regulatory role. For wellness, we have finally included wellness in our health insurance plan for government employees, and we've seen now an $8.5 million drop in health insurance premiums, so government workers will not pay as much for their health insurance, and their benefits won't go down. And then we've launched for senior care a complete renovation and rebuild of the senior living facilities in the territory, Herbert Gregg, and we're going to collapse Queen Louise Home for the Aged and purchase Seaview and do a complete restoration of senior living care and services at that site. And when we have the redirect, I'll expand a little more on what we want to do at our senior living care facilities and what we've been funded. Another announcement for the senior living care facilities.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Mosler, you are guest dinosaur, yeah, but correct. Got to go right to him. Yeah, you're correct.
No, this is a 30.
Correct. Senior moment.
Yeah, his glasses need to be
Clear
glasses.
I think it's important that we establish or make a distinction here
Yes,
when
sir.
it comes to AARP members. Not every AARP member is a senior. So when you keep navigating to saying seniors, let's make that distinction here. You could get an AARP or become a member of AARP at 50 years of age. If I'm not mistaken, I think they moved it back to 45.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But I got mine at 50, but I'm not a senior yet. And by virtue of its definition, I believe a senior is
Well, you
someone
can-
70 years old or older.
Well, you can get a senior moment at
65.
30.
Yeah, it doesn't
65,
Right
I'm
in.
sorry, 65.
Let's go.
But, I guess my rebuttal here is along the line of recruiting professionals. You know, being able to tap those healthcare providers that, not only the ones that we have lost, but those who come with a wealth of knowledge and some good experience. There was a time when the U.S. Virgin Islands was capitalizing or benefiting from medical tourism, where persons from all Eastern Caribbean islands came here to seek healthcare services. We have obviously lost our competitive edge. Now we have a great opportunity, and that opportunity is on the horizon, where we're able to, in fact, take dollars that have been committed to the U.S. Virgin Islands, put it to good use, and make sure that the one thing that don't fall short is the healthcare services that we provide in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thanks.
Mr. Smith.
This is interesting and good conversation. The proof, though, is in what you do. We know of recruitment and retention because I've done it. We've been able to recruit and retain when the government has not. We've expanded mental health and dentistry when the government has not. The issue of the dental chairs is interesting because after much ado, years and years, 5 years, these equipment stayed in the Department of Health without the intention of being transferred to the clinics and the health centers that could utilize them for the people. Now, I have to say this. The biggest issue is a culture of cooperation around our healthcare system. The fragmentation is a result of a lack of a culture that does not support cooperation and collaboration. You cannot have a health commissioner who does not talk or speak or engage with the largest providers of healthcare. You cannot have that. You cannot have a health commissioner who doesn't meet for 3 years to coordinate mass care and emergency medical services before a hurricane. That is just inappropriate, and actually it's a disservice to the people of the Virgin Islands.
All right, Mr. Moser.
I think he's interviewing for the job. I like him.
Read.
I was about to hire you as my
It's
CFO.
redirect now, sir.
30 seconds.
Yes, let's talk on redirect as for clinics. Yes, Mayo clinics, Cleveland clinics. We have a massive competitive advantage to get them here. We keep our own income taxes. They pay large amounts of income taxes, you know, millions and millions of dollars, and we can then use those to support their infrastructure, and then we can attract these people with, you know, with that, and gives us an enormous competitive advantage over the states. So we need to wake up, use this competitive advantage, and get those kinds of businesses down here. Thank you.
Was this the
Yes.
30 seconds?
Yes, now it's 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
I wanted to make sure to include the fact that, you know, for years I worked on legislation to create a task force that people don't like to hear task force. But if you don't speak to each other, you don't study the issue, how do you address the issue? So my legislation was to create a violence, to examine violence as a health issue. Because as I always say, a dead man can't pay a bill at the hospital. So we have a high incidence of murders, and we have a high incidence of domestic abuse. So we need to deal with these things interagency in terms of the health department, human services, education, and I thank you for the time.
D.S.C. Cofield.
Yes. We keep hearing from the governor all these statements about millions and millions of dollars coming in, and the federal government going to be doing this, and the federal government going to be doing that. As I say as a lawyer and former judge, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? I could stand up and say before you anything, but I want to see the proof, Governor, of that what you're telling us is the truth. Financial accountability and transparency. Put the information out to we the people, put it on a website as Virgin Islands law requires that you have not followed for the years that you have been in the administration. Put it on a website so we can see, and not just a lump sum, but how all the money is being spent. Thank you.
Albert Bryant.
If you're like my family, you know that searching for individual health care in the Virgin Islands is impossible. You can't get it. And if you're lucky enough to get in a group plan, it's $20,000. With $320 million of government leverage, we have to be able to create a PPO that would allow everyone to get access to health care for emergencies or urgent care and allow them to access a pharmacy plan. With that much, I think we can have a much healthier community and attack problems before they get bad. Prevention, prevention, prevention is the name of the game. If we lower it, if we find things early and eliminate them, problems with people, we could save money in the long run in our healthcare system.
I just wanted to expand that on the long-term, on the senior living facilities at both campuses at Herbert Gregg and at the Queen Louise Home. The initial approved budget is $75 million, and we've brought together Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, Virgin Islands Housing Authority, the Department of Human Services, the Department of Health, and what we plan to do is to put independent living facilities, assisting living facilities, and quadruple the number of in-service long-term beds. I did sign earlier this year the contracts for the registered nurses, the LPNs, and the other nurse practitioners, bringing their salaries current and competitive with the traveling nurses.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Donisar, you get the, we're dealing with you with redirect. And I am accurate. Yes, yeah. No, we're talking about, yeah,
It's a 30 seconds.
right, 30 seconds.
I think we would all concur and agree on the fact that healthcare in the Virgin Islands has hit a new low, and that it's going to take and require special partnerships in order to rebuild our healthcare system in the Virgin Islands in order to provide first-class services, not only for Virgin Islanders, for even visitors who might be visiting our shores and, God forbid, they fall sick while they're here. And the worst experience that we can have is that someone come from the United States and because of the lack of healthcare services in the Virgin Islands, that they expire as a result of a failure in our system. So I believe we would all concur that healthcare in the Virgin Islands has to be brought to a different level.
Willie Joe Smith.
Let me unequivocally state that I would not support a private-public partnership with our community hospitals. I believe that we have the capacity and the resources here to capture our money here. I believe that we should, if we move the hospitals from its political boards and move it under the university, create a university system so that all these hard-to-meet and hard-to-fill specialties can be rotated in here. We don't need to use our money into a contract to sell our hospitals, because in essence, that's what we say. Thank you.
All right, we are going to another question, and I cleared this with AARP. We've pretty well gone over long-term and short-term. So what I want to do is go to one of our alternate questions, which is question number 5. Approximately 1 year ago,
Mr. Moderator?
Number 4 is still outstanding.
no, we're going to number 5.
Skipping number
scratched
4,
four.
yes.
Oh, you
You
scratched
don't have an
4.
envelope for that?
Oh, okay.
There's no envelope.
All right.
No white envelopes.
Do you want,
No,
No, that's fine.
it's okay, you can handle it?
yes.
All right, good.
If you need it repeated.
If you can, Holland will
No,
go up
no
there and
losses.
whisper in your
No
ear.
losses.
Let's go. Question number 5. Approximately 1 year ago, we were hit by 2 Category 5 hurricanes, Irma and Maria. With unprecedented losses and destruction in the Virgin Islands in the area of multi-millions of dollars. Question number 1, part A. What would you have done what would you do to continue the recovery? And B is, what would you do to mitigate the effects of future hurricanes, earthquakes, or tsunamis? That is your question, Mellon Young.
Immediacy is what I would have done. I would have immediately looked at my plan, which was supposed to have been done, because I'm hearing things about the plan, but I don't believe that the book was even open. After the hurricane, I tried as a senator to be involved in the response. And of course, we're not written into the response as policymakers, but it was unprecedented, 2 Cat 5s, and we were rebuffed. The lieutenant governor invited me to a task force, and the governor disinvited me from the task force. And I decided, let me go to Puerto Rico, see how we have the federal officials and the local officials work with each other. And I was able to see a difference in how information was exchanged with the policymakers in Puerto Rico. And I happened to be in the position to be in Puerto Rico and be airlifted to DC, where the majority leader of the Senate and the minority leader of the Senate and several other congressional leaders, to include our delegate, met with us. The majority leader of Puerto Rico, Camilo Rios, and the minority leader of the Senate of Puerto Rico, Mr. Eduardo Batia. And the three of us were able to go to all these Congress people to plead for the first amount of money to be given. And when I sat with a Senate Majority Leader of the states, Mitch McConnell, he said, well, the first request was just about $130 million. And I said, impossible. With the destruction that I saw, $130 million is just hardly enough. And we need to put in money and cushion money for economic development, because as all of this is happening, we need to uplift ourselves. We need to start getting our industries going. We cannot just rely on construction, which the response would be mostly on construction. And so I continue to as of yesterday, I signed a letter with these very leaders so that we can go back and we can say, listen, we are being promised billions of dollars, but we're not seeing them. I mean, we're not blind. So how many billions of dollars? I forget, because I don't even see the first millions of dollars being spent. So we have to be honest with each other first and foremost. The federal government told us reimbursable, and what happens with reimbursable? You have to spend and then get reimbursed, and the governor doesn't want to do that. Thank you for the time.
Thank you for your response. Candidate Diaz-Cofel.
I'd like to start with mitigating the effects first. Preparation. Incident command system. Dwight Nicholson, my running mate, is trained in the incident command system. That was a failure, absolute failure. I got very emotional answering a similar question in St. Thomas the other night. Why did I get so emotional? Because I saw so much unnecessary suffering. After Irma, which hit St. Thomas, we had this governor making our people stand in long lines in the hot sun for hours. Women with children, with small children, senior citizens, they were standing in lines at 3 distribution centers, only 3 distribution centers. They'd get to the front of the line, and what would they be told? No water. They've run out of water. They've run out of food. They've run out of tarps. And the people were really suffering. It was just unconscionable. I immediately started saying, open up the distribution centers, go to the churches, the synagogues, the mosques. Those entities know what the people need. And it took this governor months and months and months to do that. In the meantime, he's sitting at Government House in air conditioning and having a West Indian buffet with the gentleman from FEMA. He set that up at a press conference while we were sitting eating crackers and sardines. So we are going to be prepared. And I will be a governor that will be on the ground. I will be visiting the shelters. As I was teaching, I was there reading actually to the children at the Lockhart Center for many, many months. And the governor, they said, did not even come to that shelter until one day I was driving out of the parking lot, and in come these black SUVs. And who was there but the governor, with the governor of New York, Mr. Cuomo. That was the first time he had gotten to the center. But we will be a team that will be on the ground, actually suffering with the people and talking to the people, knowing what the people are going through, not eating a West Indian buffet when our people are eating sardines and crackers. And what else will we do? We will make sure that we continue the efforts that have started, but we will be financially accountable and transparent. As I mentioned before already, that we are being told all this money is coming in from the federal government, but what do we see happening? A few little patches on roads, and after a couple of months, the potholes are back? That's unacceptable. Is that what the federal government is paying? No, that's a result of not following through and making sure that our money, we the people's money, is being spent properly. We will go in and we will make sure that the leaks are all stopped up. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Albert Ryan.
the first thing I would do is to find out what really is going on. I don't really trust what I hear, and I'm hearing sporadic information about what's really going on. And I would be transparent with that information so you know what's going on as well. I would find a territorial emergency operation plan. We had it when I was at Commissioner of Labor. It told you what to do for disasters from step A to Z, before the storm, during the storm, and after for each commissioner. I think it's also important to expedite housing. You have to anticipate what's going to happen next. We're about to get a housing shock, and the rents in the Virgin Islands are going to go through the roof. We've seen this before, so we need to get emergency housing here, not only for people, but for people who need to work. I think attacking the electrical problem at one time was a great idea. We need to do that again for the roads, for the hospital, and for the schools. Let's get a cruise ship out there and get people and fix these things back immediately. Hoard cash. I think it's important, because it's reimbursable, that we create a fund so we can hoard cash and make sure we have cash to keep paying vendors to make sure that the recovery is constant and we don't have gluts in the system because we can't pay. Train. A lot of this is paperwork. If you don't do your administrative and your paperwork right, you end up losing a lot of federal money. We need to train our people to make sure that they're doing the paperwork and putting it in the first time. For future disaster, I think what we need to do is we need to harden our communication systems. We should have universal internet in the Virgin Islands, and in the event of a storm, it should be bumped up, and all the cell phones now can connect through the internet, so we'd all be able to speak, even though we were suffering from AT&T outages. With GPS, the most vulnerable. You get a senior card, we have your ID, where you live, we could find you. In an event of a storm, we can immediately locate you once you have that card. Practice. We have to practice in order to be prepared for a storm, so we have to drill for all kinds of emergencies. We need to hire an emergency professional for FEMA, somebody that actually has been through an emergency and knows how to access the resources and what to do in the event of a storm. My handwriting is bad, I forgot one. But we have to depoliticize this process, and we have to move now, just like my slogan, in order to make sure that we are hardened and ready for anything that may happen to us. Because it doesn't have to be a storm. It could be a tsunami, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be a tornado. So we have to make sure that we're ready and prepared for the next event.
Thank you for your response. Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you. The emergency operations plan that the government has, we did utilize a good portion of that, but I made immediate changes in terms of how I would respond to an emergency. When we had the major training session with a number of state National Guards and FEMA and federal emergency response teams in the U.S. Virgin Islands, we get great kudos from the U.S. government and specifically from the Federal Emergency Management Agency for how we very early on embedded the folks at FEMA in with the cabinet just prior to the arrival of the storms and created a strategy to work through the storms and response to the storms. I think many people in the Virgin Islands can attest to the fact that very early on, from 7 a.m. of the morning when Irma passed, and again in St. Croix with Maria, I was already out in the street with National Guard people, and I was out with the VIPD. I don't know where Ms. Cofield gets her information about my schedule and what shelters I visit or don't visit. That sounds like a runaway train. But the point that I would like to make is that the response to the disasters have to be clear and concise, and your federal partners need to know what your priorities are. And we have been able to demonstrate that. I don't believe I'm hearing anyone on this panel saying that I should have gone to Puerto Rico and they would have helped us get more resources, because there is no question on the record that there are people in Puerto Rico who have not even been connected to power, who doesn't have water, who does not have the resources that they're requesting from the federal government. And so this business of following somebody else, even when they're going off the cliff, that we must do because we don't have the confidence in ourselves as Virgin Islanders to work and to deliver to our people. Are there lessons to learn from the responses of Irma and Maria? Yes. Specifically, learning the lesson in terms of when we have to do medical evacuations, how we do that in a more sensible way and sensitive way to provide and ensure that not only the patient is going to facility, but some family member is going. How do we engage the public health service earlier in that particular process? How we bring medical practitioners and medical support services to the Virgin Islands on a more rapid basis to really deal with the issues that are affecting members of the community.
Thank you for your response. Senator Donaldson.
Thank you. There's an old saying, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. There's so many different variables. There's so many different variables when it comes to preparedness. And one of the essential components of being able to conduct or even have an effective recovery process in the wake of any disaster is your ability to communicate. That is essential. I believe that under Dana Stork-Hansen administration, we would be prepared to ensure that every single commission and head of government agencies that are all interconnected have a satellite phone, that they're able to communicate through a different medium. You see, after the hurricane, I was able to traverse around the islands and make my way to the radio station. And I sat in a radio station for over 6 hours and had to pause while I was trying to offer comfort to the people of the Virgin Islands during that period. And the very governor couldn't even get in because I believe you were using a conventional phone, the regular typical AT&T phone or Sprint phone, which most of the system was down. We have to understand, and if you go back to Maryland, we should have learned from Maryland. And I must commend former Governor Snyder, who had satellite phones in place, and most of the leadership was able to communicate. We sat there and listened to a commissioner on the radio telling contractors to make their way down to public works, not even being sure if they had a clear path to get to public work. So you see, those are the mistakes that we have made. I was involved in the drafting of the Vitema bill. You could check the record. And I must give him a lot of credit. Alexander Farrelly, God rest his soul, who was able to maverick that piece of legislation through the Senate, recognizing the contributions of former Senator Bingley Richardson. We spent months drafting that piece of legislation. I know the contribution and all the players. And if you follow it and not divert from it, it can in fact work. Now I understand that sometimes you have to use your discretion when it comes to leadership. And I would like to take this opportunity because I'm disturbed by this. How could you evacuate people out of the Virgin Islands and not, medical evacuees, and not have a tracking system? And left them in the United States, abandoned, and they're struggling. And do you know that it's over 52 of them have now deceased as a result of that stress?
We know.
That is not sensible, and that is not sensitive.
Mr. Smith.
As perhaps the only person on this panel that actually worked as the mass care coordinator for this territory for almost 20 years, I think I have a little experience in what it means to establish preparation as well as recovery. As the interim and acting and deputy commissioner for the Department of Human Services for almost 20 years, I had the task of ensuring that during and before storms that we had shelters in place, we had feeding in place, we had evacuations to shelters in place, and after the storm, coordinate with the federal government for the individual and family programs, which have been changed to a different name now. In recovery, one thing that a Smith-Frederick administration would ensure is that the people of the Virgin Islands maintain what we call a all hazards at all time readiness profile. We should be ready for any and all types of disasters at any time. That's something that we will implement in the schools, a culture of being prepared. Because right now we know that with global warming, climate change as they call it, we could be subject to any type of hurricane or seismic activity at any time. The recovery aspects include a number of things, but it starts first from planning. And what we did not do leading up to the storm or leading up to those events was plan. I helped write the Territorial Emergency Operation Plan. And I know that as of 2010, we had a plan. In 2017, many aspects of that plan were never exercised because the most important piece, which is the medical piece, never met. They never met. Now, mitigation must include a few things: infrastructure, processes, and people. We need to ensure that the processes and infrastructure are tested, that the people and the systems are well known, and that our people have the right information at the right time so that the community can make the decisions that are necessary that affect their families. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Moser.
Yeah. You know, I think the fact, when I hear Albert say he didn't know, tells us we're all learning a lot for the first time by listening to the governor now. This information has been not available to people, and I appreciate hearing it. Anyway, look, I talked before, we have a management and a finance problem, and they've all described the management issues, but let's not forget the finance problem. Okay, $220 million came to us from the refinery sale, which disappeared into operating expenses. I'm not saying it went any place wrong, but it disappeared into paying people and operating expenses. And every possible reserve we had was drained for operating expenses with nothing to show for it. So when we hit the day before the storm, we had something like, if the numbers were correct, $60 million in payable and maybe a day or two cash on hand. And the government was had a structural deficit of $150 million. And so there's no way you can be prepared and do all these things we want to do if you can't pay for any of them. So all right, and so what we're looking at now is the same thing, okay? We've had what almost looks like a scorched earth policy. That's when one army retreats, they just burn everything so the people coming through have nothing left. So right now we're looking at structural deficit, who knows how high? Some of the senators are saying 200 million, who knows, okay? We're looking at 150 million of unpaid vendors. We're looking at 40 million unpaid WAPA bills, the unfunded liability for the GERS. And then if we manage to get $10 million, and we have money for a new hotel. Okay, sure, if you don't pay anything else. Okay, so, all right, so, look, what I'm saying is I'm ready to step in and do the things to make the serious money we need to bring it in, and not from taxing everybody on a sin tax where some guys, somebody's working hard all day and goes home to have a beer and we try and tax that guy. Our government has always taxed the people who have nothing. Every tax I've seen passed in the last 15 years has been going after the people who have nothing. It's the most regressive tax structure I've ever seen. I don't do that. Nobody's ever come after me for any taxes, okay?
Because you don't pay any.
Yeah.
You don't pay any.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Anyway, so I'll be, I've outlined some of the ways we can bring in the serious money that we need. We can bring it in without taxing ourselves, and we can get ourselves into prosperity and preparedness.
Yes, she is. She's at Reba. All right, let's go to Mellon Young. You're at Rebut. 1 minute, ma'am.
When it comes to emergencies and disasters, I believe that the first thing you need is compassion. You need people who listen to know what it is you're going through. And as someone who studied communications, I'm trained in communications, I think this was a failure in communicating with the public. Now, people will say, but how can she say that? There were press conferences almost every day. The press conferences turned into jokes about concubines, about dinner bells ringing, and people were suffering. Now people hear wind blowing and they're traumatized because they're saying the response was poor. Not only was the response poor, we didn't even take care of our nurses, our police, our VI National Guardsmen who were demoralized because they weren't even paid. So you close the distribution centers or the lines, you don't give the DSNAP, you don't give unemployment insurance, and your people are perishing. I will stop right there. Thank you very much.
DSE Kofeld.
I walked amongst the people on St. John and St. Thomas right after Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And what did the people in St. John tell me? These are the people, what they told me. They said they would have starved to death if it wasn't for outsiders coming in. And when you hear people saying that, it's really shocking that our government really let them down. And who was the one that stepped in but Mr. Bloomberg, from the former mayor from New York City? And he was on an interview earlier this year, and what did he say? The governor asked him as far as the number of linemen to bring down. I think it was 100. And Michael Bloomberg said, 100? You need thousands of linemen. And he was able to put together those thousands of linemen to come down to help us have our electricity reconnected. So it's planning, it's preparation, and it's always thinking about what could happen. And Governor, I heard from the people at the shelter themselves that you did not go there. That's what I do. I go down and I talk to the people that were there. That's how I found out you had not been there before Mr. Cuomo came. Thank you.
Albert, Ryan.
The most valuable asset we had after the storm, next to Holland Redfield, was the people. The people cut their ways to the main road, chopped their ways down to see their friends and family. I deciphered my writing. We need to capitalize on that and have a citizen corps, a group of people in different places on the island that know one another and are connected and are ready to mobilize after the storm and clear the road so we can get emergency care to where it needs to be. You can go and check on your friends and family. Those people would be exempted from the barbarous curfew, I'll call it that, and will be able to get out on the streets and assist in clearing the roads. And that was the most important thing. Then you can move the water and the food and medical supplies and everything else. So establishing a citizen corps should be something we should all do. So by March or April each year, we have these people assembled and give them resources so that they can address these types of issues during the storm, whether we stack tarps or pitchforks, whatever.
Kenneth Mapp.
Thank you. 34 days after Maria struck, schools were open. 100 days after Maria struck, 95% of Virgin Islanders who could take power were energized. $300 million is being spent on 4,000 homes, putting on new coated roofs. Firefighters, National Guard personnel will be able to assert to you that they were assigned the task to go into senior communities and to go to seniors based on the rostrum at the Department of Human Services and deliver food and supplies and support to our senior community. Food and water supplies were delivered to government agencies, large government agencies, and including the legislature of the Virgin Islands. I don't know what 3 distribution system centers you went to, but I can tell you that the facts belie that the story is different from how you are relating it.
Thank you very much for your response. Mr. Donistar.
The Donna Storg Hansen team would have done it totally different. Preparedness is everything. You know, I think that it was incumbent on us to recognize that imminent disaster was before us. Why not coordinate to have a tanker position, not a tanker, but a barge position somewhere on the mainland prepared to bring 20,000 tops, tops don't spoil, and all the essential things that we need in the aftermath of a hurricane, as well as have each commission and agency head responsible for their agencies and their departments. Because when you looked at what transpired after the hurricane, you had personnel in government departments out there in lines trying to get essential items, trying to get aid, when in fact you could have resolved that problem by making sure that they were part of a leadership team, that when we brought in these essential items, the distribution would have been smooth and assist the people at the Virgin Islands when they most needed it. Thank you.
Melita Smith.
That's called the Territorial Emergency Operations Plan. All these elements, including a Citizens Corps, pre-positioning, is part of our plan. I know because I helped write it. The problem is that it was not executed, it was not trained, so when the event happened, it collapsed. There's something called the Commander-in-Chief, and that's what we're under. We know we're under a state of emergency, so the Commander-in-Chief role is in effect. But there's also something called compassionate leadership for people who is going through trauma. When our chief executive holds a press conference prior to a storm and tells our folks that if you don't evacuate write your social security number on your chest in permanent marker so that after the storm, when the search and rescue comes, then they could identify you by your social security number. We deserve better than this.
Yes.
We must do better than this.
Yes.
The numbers speak to what happened after the storm. But what it doesn't speak to, that's two-dimensional. What it doesn't speak to was the way we felt and the way we were treated. A Smith-Frederick administration would not do that.
Mr. Moderator.
Thanks for your response.
I have a concern because this was a 30-second rebuttal, yet
That was one
he
minute.
said 30 seconds, so I went by the 30 seconds.
You're getting me in trouble again.
Yes, the,
No, said 1 minute.
he said 30 seconds.
Redirect is
You just gotta
30
watch the
seconds.
signs.
There's a difference.
They're right in
between
front of
the
you.
two. All right, let's go.
What do I have?
Yes,
They're
please.
right there.
20 minutes?
Can't miss them.
No.
I
1
didn't get
minute,
the 30
sir.
seconds, so I have to say something.
Okay, so look, in a public televised forum, you saw the governor stop me in my tracks. He said, "You don't pay any taxes," and he said it twice. This is confidential IRB information. Okay? To use that against me, or attempt to, for political purposes in a public forum is a very serious infraction. Now, you can tell me that you know your attorney general is not going to do anything about it.
Well,
But
he's
it
not.
makes it nonetheless,
Well,
okay,
Well, he's not.
infraction.
That's not an
Okay,
infraction.
if I want to disclose my taxes, I can do that, that's fine. But somebody who has access to confidential information, using it, like that is, okay, that's way over the line. Okay. Second of all, so let me be on the defensive, although I'd rather not. I do pay a lot of taxes. I just have a $160,000 property bill. He was talking about my income taxes, and I did have losses, fairly large losses a few years ago, and so they were larger than my income. So you don't pay taxes when you're losing more money than you're making. Okay, thank you.
All right, what, do you know how much time you have now?
And I don't want to be heckled by number one. Oh.
Right, you can, you got 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm just a stickler for rules, and I certainly did
know.
not pay attention to the sign, obviously. But, I just wanted to say that people will never forget how you make them feel. They'll forget what you said, but they won't forget how you made them feel. And in the last section, I spoke about closing down the distribution lines and no unemployment insurance and the D-SNAP, and they can't forget. And governance is about leading. And there was no leadership at that time. Mr. Sean, there was no leadership at that time. And so I propose to lead, not by personalities, not by joking around with the population, but by leading by example. So St. John, for the longest while, had no communication. And if you needed a firefighter on St. John, you needed to leave your house and go get the firefighter. If you needed to get the police, you needed to go get them personally. How can we forget our tiniest island, Love City, St. John? Thank you.
Let me just mention something to you in the spirit of trying to keep this thing moving. I would like to get to the yes and no answers. I do not think, subject to your thoughts, even though I'm the moderator, that we don't need to do the redirect, which is 30 seconds. If we can agree with that, all of you, this will be a demonstration of how cooperative we are.
The time is,
All right.
the time is.
No,
almost done, yeah.
I'm just saying, I know what I'm doing on the time.
Okay.
But if we go all the way around, I can't get to those. And if you'd rather go all the way around, we'll do it.
Just a point of inquiry, you said it was 2.5 hours.
Right.
And we were here from 4 to 6:30.
Right.
6:39.
We're done.
Thank you very much. He said we're doing another.
No, just sit down. Mosberg, sit down.
And I don't want him to go
And
until
we
I-
don't
I-
want you to go over towards
before-
Matt,
I
all
don't,
right?
no, he can come over here. I don't have a problem with him.
I don't know if you know, Howland,
You know, Holland, we got more votes to get. We got to get out
All
of here.
right, okay, no, but would you like me to do that? And then we'll get off. We'll go ahead, and I'm going to ask you the yes or no questions.
We have formed a new candidates union,
Now I
and
gotta-
you can't make us work.
I've got to
You
check
can't make
with
us do it.
Vaya. I've got a strict one over there.
As long as we get to our closing remarks, that's fine
questions?
with me.
Okay. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to go to these yes or no's. Now, I just want the yes or no. If, in fact, you don't like the question, you can move on. You don't have to answer it. I think not answering it would be a statement in itself. We'll start off with Mr. Donistar that way. Why don't we start off with Mr. Mapp? Let's go around
Yeah,
this way a little bit. Mr. Mapp, okay. Do you support an elected attorney general? Yes or no? Or would you?
Well, I do in.
Nope, sir.
Oh, it's like, this is a yes or no?
Yes or no?
Oh, okay, yes or no.
When you draft it, you can
Yes
do
or
what
no?
you want.
All right.
If
so,
you- if you
so
get elected.
I'm not opposed to an elected attorney general.
All right, let's go. Albert?
No.
No. No.
You're talking about versus what we have now versus the governor?
Governor.
I mean, there are a
Yes
lot.
or no? We
Bill?
don't have an elected attorney
No,
general.
no, but there are a
now.
lot of other alternatives to electing an attorney general.
Well, I understand that, but we
this-
don't
just
have
this
one
one.
now.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm asking you, do you or do you not
Supported, yeah.
want an elected attorney general in the Virgin Islands?
I do not.
Okay, fine.
No.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Donistar. Okay, next question. We're going to start off because Mr. Mapp is. You couldn't hear. Oh, you want to wrap it up? Okay, let's go to wrap it up. Sorry, guys. Yeah, okay. What we're going to do at this particular point here, we're wrapping this thing up. And what we're going to do is.
You got to speak into the microphone,
I
Senator
am
Redfield.
speaking in a microphone now. So used to having the headsets on in the radio room. We're going to close this thing out, and again, we're going to have a 1-minute closing. Let's really get it short. We can bring in the AARP up, and we'll do it that way. Be better. We just because we're running out of time.
Sorry for the confusion here at the end, but we'll call on each one of the candidates to make their final statement.
No. She said wrap it up.
We said speak into the microphone.
You said, did you say wrap it up? Okay, you said wrap it up.
1 minute closing.
Okay, go ahead.
Call on each one of the candidates, 1 minute each to make your final statement.
Right.
Thank you. Starting
Okay.
with Donistar.
I
Mr. Donistar?
I think you ought to start with
Thank you.
Mapp. That's the way it went before. Let's start on this side because it's.
No, we're starting with Mr.
Do
Donistar.
you want to do that? Fine, go right ahead. I won't fight it.
Donna Storg Hansen, number 2 on the ballot. As we appeal to the people of the Virgin Islands in making a separation from the rest of the field, we believe that leadership is about governance, leadership is about being sensible, leadership is about exercising good judgment. And I believe the team of Donna Storg Hansen is prepared to do just that, exercise good judgment, and along the way being passionate and compassionate. The Virgin Islands are at crossroads. On those crossroads, we see the vexing problems that confront the people of the Virgin Islands. And I believe that we are prepared to address those problems. And in the next coming months, I believe when the public have had the opportunity to vote on the type of leadership that they're looking for, all those components are going to be incorporated into what you're looking for in leadership. As we prepare to turn the corner on those lingering problems that confront us, it is going to be incumbent on each one of you, and I encourage everyone to go out and vote. But also for those who are not registered to vote, it's important that you exercise that democratic right to make a difference. Donna Storg Hansen, number 2 on the ballot. Thank you.
Malik Joe Smith.
Thank you, AARP. Thank you, Dr. Redfield. And to all of our colleagues here who have given of themselves to be your governor and lieutenant governor. Smith Frederick, number 6 on the ballot, www.sf2018.net is our website. At this time, I want to appeal to the voters. Each of you have an opportunity to change the direction of our politics. Our politics has been toxic, it has been ineffective. Whether you're with the current administration, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're with another team, I invite you to join our team. I invite those who are listening to join our team. We have a big tent and we are open to everyone. If we want to go in a direction that supports the uplift and the benefit of the Virgin Islands, if you're looking for hope and a reset, I say it is right here in Smith Frederick. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Number 6 on the ballot.
Mr. Bosler.
I would have the Attorney General appointed by the judiciary. No, we are in a state of severe financial emergency right now, and I don't think anybody thinks the people who got us into this are the ones who can get us out. The Mosler Fonseca team is lucky number 7 on the ballot. Roll with lucky number 7. We will get you your tax refunds. We will always tell the truth. We will always obey the law. We will always be entirely transparent, like I've been my whole life. While I was running $30 billion in assets, every trade was disclosed to everyone. It's the only way I am. And we will not let you down. And so vote for lucky number 7 on November 6th. And on November 7th, you will see 6 slightly used government limousines up for sale on eBay. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill and Young.
He likes to end with that one.
Thank you, AARP. And despite the fumbles, Dr. Redfield, Mr. John, it was a pleasure for me to be here. I am a person that most of you in this room, because the fact that you're in this room, you follow politics closely, you know I take very hard positions. I'm not on the take. And when I take my positions, I stand my ground because I believe in what I present to you. I am not going to stand here or sit here and tell you I'm going to do 3 years into my administration. I would have been cutting ribbons, getting things done, making things happen. This is not the time to now promise and continue to do something. We will make it happen. Edgar Bengoa and I, we are number 4 on your ballot. We ask for your vote and your support. We cannot bring about changes or improvements without your support. I have grown in the last 8 years, and I'm not about cutting people's pay, where you have sin taxes, property taxes going up, and all the taxes that you want to consider. I have grown and matured in this job. I thank you for the time.
Diazi Kofeld.
Yes, good evening. Soraya Diassi Kofeld and Dwight Nicholson, number 3 on the ballot. I want to thank AARP and, of course, FIA and TV2. Thank you so much for this very important forum that you've put together for us, because it's very important that you, the people, know our positions. We've had sound bites tonight. Dwight Nicholson and I have a very detailed plan. It's called Putting the People First Plan. It's on our website, sorayaforgovernor.com. We are very experienced. We are very detail-oriented. You'll go to see our plan and read it, and you'll see a lot of detail in there because we are going forward, hitting the road running, not in January, but as soon as we're elected and the announcement is made, we will begin with the transition team. That's when the transition begins, and I was on the former transition team for this administration, so I know about transition teams. I've served in all 3 branches, or I have experience and knowledge in all 3 branches of government, and Dwight Nicholson as an engineer, and we want to be able to serve the public, take out self-service from public service. Thank you.
Albert Bryan.
Good evening, Virgin Islands. Tonight, you got the opportunity to listen to all the candidates. You got the opportunity to see who was prepared and who was not prepared, who had plans, who answered the questions in detail, step by step, talking about all the things that we're going to do. You had an articulated vision, And that vision is one that you and I can work towards together. 4 years ago, the Matt Potter administration came before you after Matt had tried for his third time to gain the governorship. As a loving Virgin Islands, you gave him a chance. He failed. He's here telling you and promising you to do the things that he said he was going to do 4 years ago again. He delivered on what the people said he would do. He's the same person 4 years later asking you for your vote again. Vote for our Virgin Islands for all of us. Change course now and vote Tregenza Roach and Albert Bryan, November 6th, number 5 on your ballot. Thank you so much.
Ken Mapp.
Thank you so much for those warm words, Albert. I'd like to thank AARP and VIA for putting this forum together. Really, really appreciate it. Osbert Potter and I are number 1 on your ballot. We have demonstrated strong leadership in the community. We have delivered on our word and on our promise. We have established strong partnerships with the federal government. We have expanded and grown the economy. That this year's budget has $169 million of new revenues, which allowed us to provide living wages for the Virgin Islands and to already settle over 19 collective bargaining agreements funded for 2 and 3 years. We are committed to the cause. We have a plan on the table that we've been articulating, and yes, we will continue to make announcements as new projects turn over, and we are ready to execute them. We ask the people of the Virgin Islands, stay the course. Stay with the plan and elect Osbert Potter and Kenneth Mapp number 1 on November 6th. Thank you very much.
You bet. In closing, let me just say to VIA and AARP, it has been a sincere pleasure to work with you folks. Pardon about some of the mix-ups that we've had. The other thing that I would like to say to you, the folks there that have been interviewed, I thought it was an outstanding, as far as I'm concerned, again, display of knowledge that you do have. And to you, the voter, it is so essential that you capture all these words. There have been other debates, but I believe we really did a good job here tonight, other than some of the little mix-ups. And I want to say to each and every one of you, thank you very much. And at this point, and Will or John, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you putting up with me.
AARP is pleased to collaborate with VIA TV2 to host this gubernatorial forum with the intention of addressing the concerns of our more than 22,000 members in the Virgin Islands and the entire population age 50 plus. We hope this forum was informative and that you are now better prepared to decide which candidate you would like to see as the next governor of the Virgin Islands. We greatly appreciate each of the gubernatorial candidates for participating and sharing their ideas and hopes for the future with us. Thank you. We thank Mr. Holland Redfield, Mr. Willard John, the VIA TV2 team, the AARP team, and the AARP volunteers. We especially thank you, the audience, for trusting AARP and VIA to bring you this event, and thank you for attending. Be the difference, vote. May God bless the Virgin Islands of the United States of America, and may God bless our great country. Good night.